celebrate the start of Christmas by the lighting of this bridge and the honoring of an individual that has meant so much to so many for so long. I was taught as a young child that if a teacher or an ex-teacher asked you to do something, you did it, and you did it with the best of your ability. Early October, I was helping Deb take a few things out to the community center when one of my ex-teachers, someone that I've had so much respect and admiration for over the years, asked me if I would come in and say a few words tonight. And before I could give her an answer, she said, "Dave, I know you don't like to do these things, but you are one of the few people that was a student of Mrs. Bane's and also taught with her for quite a few years." Well, let me tell you why I don't like to come in and public speak. When I would speak at one of the Go Cat dinners, I would always have to follow AJ's mansion. When I would speak at one of the graduation ceremonies at Barrackville Middle School, I would always have to follow Mr. Lewis Hall. And tonight, who do I have to follow? Another great orator in Steve Snyder. But it is my pleasure to come in and say a few words about a lady that has meant so much to all of us. As an 11-year-old student in 65 and 66, I was in the classroom of one of the great individuals and teachers to ever walk the hallways of Barrackville School. I remember those days quite well from almost 60 years ago. I remember the mornings. It was your ELA subjects, your English, your reading, your spelling, your writing. And when Mrs. Bane was finished, and if you had your work completed, you went in and worked in the old SRA reading lab, which she was so big on. In the afternoon, it was math, and more math. And if time allowed, then you did some social studies work. It was such a great year of learning, but we had fun while we were in her classroom, but she was serious business. During the 77-78 school year, I was hired to teach at Barrackville High School. 79-80, they closed the doors to the high school. Those kids, the high school students, went to the new North Marion High School. Mrs. Bane moved upstairs to teach in the middle school, and I remained to teach 7th and 8th grade social studies. This is when I developed a long and lasting friendship with Mrs. Bane. She was a mentor to so many young teachers back in those days. But the difference was teaching was quite different. Teaching in those days, you were basically given a grade book and a student textbook, and that was it. If you were lucky, you got a teacher's edition.
No one learned how to write
and more writing. And if you wanted any resource material, you had to create it. If you wanted to give a test, you made the test. The quiz, you developed the quiz, a study guide, a worksheet, an activity sheet. You had to make it. And if you wanted to expand on a subject, you had to find it anywhere that you could. Well, you think about this. A couple doors down from me was a lady who was born a year and 3 months after the armistice was signed in World War I. She was born about 2 or 3 months after the finalization of the 19th Amendment to the United States Constitution, which gave women the right to vote. As an 8-year-old girl, she was there when the stock market collapsed. This country went into the Great Depression. As a 20-year-old young lady, just starting a family, the Japanese Empire attacked Pearl Harbor. She lived through Pearl Harbor. She lived through the Korean War. She was there when Brown versus Board of Education in 1954 would change the face of public education. The technological advances of the 1950s, the first satellites put in orbit in the late 50s. She was there for the Vietnam War, the civil rights movement of the 60s, the assassination of John Kennedy, the assassination of Martin Luther King, the assassination for Bobby Kennedy. She sat in front of her TV in that late August, July night of 1969, like many other Americans, and watched as Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin set foot on the moon. She witnessed the Watergate of the 70s. Basically, what I had below me was a walking encyclopedia, and many mornings I would get down and see Mrs. Bane, and I would ask her, because if you wanted to know exactly what was going on during that time period, 20th century history, she was the person to ask, and she never did not find the time to talk with me. That was the type of lady that Mrs. Bane was. At the end of the 81 school year, I decided to get out of education. I took another job. During the summer of 81, I had two people approach me. The legendary principal, Lorna Gump, and Mrs. Bane, and both of them basically told me, you're making a mistake. Your place is in the classroom. It did not take me long to realize that these ladies were right. And I went back, I finished a degree in science, and in October 1985, I was rehired to teach 8th grade science and social studies at Barrackville School. Mrs. Bane was there. But the job was not going to start until the end of the first 9 weeks, which was in November. So, Mrs. Mormon, you probably do not know this, but for 3 weeks, I taught alongside your mother as a 5th grade teacher. Hardest 3 weeks I ever had a teacher. And if it had not been for Mrs. Bane, I would have never got through those 3 weeks. During that time, I saw a lady of great faith. And I want to use that word, Steve, as a verb. She had great faith in the God she loved, in the church she loved, that she was so faithful to. She had great faith in the family. Harry, Becky, Bobby, Spike, Jeannie, and Butch. The faith she had in the community that she served so long and so well. And the faith that she had in the school that she loved so much as a student, as secretary for Lorna Gump, and a teacher for 27 years. And the school loved her as much as she loved the school. When I retired in 2018, one of my ex-students who was teaching at Barrackville School asked me who were some of the great people that I taught with. And I named a few that he had at Barrackville. I named a few that he had at North Marion that I had taught with at Barrackville. And then I told him there was none better than a mother and a daughter that taught at Barrackville School. One was a high school teacher, and the other was an elementary and middle school teacher. Not because of everything they did in the classroom, because they were great in the classroom, but it was the extra things that they did. They never saw nothing but worth and value in their students. After she retired, I told him that we could expect a phone call 2 or 3 times a year. The school would receive a phone call asking what they could do to help students who were in need. This was the type of lady that she was. So tonight, as we stand on this great structure, an engineering marvel of 1853 by Lemuel and Eli Chenoweth, designed, engineered, and built this bridge And as we thank the committee for the start of this Christmas season in Barrackville, let's remember a lady who meant so much to so many for so long.